episode, I'm going to be mixing up a cocktail of two extremely dorky things and serving to you a glass of forgotten 80s toys. So, stick around. Hello, fellow dorks and dorkettes, and welcome to Plastic Ghosts. My name's Rob, and in this episode, we will be talking about forgotten 80s comic book toys. Some of the toys on this list I can vividly remember playing with and loving. At the time, I had no idea that they were spawned from comic books. A few years later, I was a little bit more smartened up, and yeah, by then, these toys were long gone from my collection, and from an early age, I had regrets of letting toys slip out of my grasp. One question before we get started. Hawaiian shirt, a little bit too much for the graveyard? I mean, I don't mean any disrespect to these fallen toys, but it's the summer and that's what I do. This toy was released by Ideal Toys in 1981, and it has ties to one of the most popular toys of the 1970s. Now, the popular toy was Evel Knievel's wind-up motorcycle, but this toy was Team America. See, in the late 70s, Evel Knievel kind of got himself in a little bit of trouble with domestic violence. Now, Ideal switched gears quickly and wanted to remove Evel Knievel's likeness from their toys. But they wanted to keep the awesome motorized wind-up motorcycle that they created. So, they invented Team America. This also capitalized on the Americana presentation that Evel Knievel had while creating a group that sported the red, white, and blue. Now, to get the good word out there, Ideal enlisted Marvel to create a comic around these new motorcycle heroes that they created. Now, before we dive into the crazy story that Marvel came up with for Team America, I'm going to jump online here real quick and read you the names of the characters. Now, I believe these are the characters that Ideal created, and they were the ones that named them. So, yeah, there's no way I'm remembering these names, so bear with me one moment.
A few moments later.
Okay, folks, here they are. Cowboy, Georgia Anna, Honcho, Are You Ready? And yes, initials of his first names are RU with the last name of Ready. Wolf, and Wrench. Now, I have no idea if all these characters were fit to plastic and produced. I only know a few of them were because of what I could find online. Now, like I said, they utilized the exact same wind-up motorized motorcycle action that made the Evel Knievel toy one of the most popular ones of the 1970s. But that popularity kind of waned without the Evel Knievel name. So, in steps Marvel, and I honestly can't tell you if the storyline that they came up with helped or hurt this toy line. See, the story is that Hydra actually experimented on the mothers of these characters, in turn making their babies mutants. But not the cool mutants that we know from X-Men. No, these are mutants with no discernible powers whatsoever. Until they all meet, by chance, at a motorcycle rally. Then, when all of them are together, their powers manifest into possessing somebody in their general vicinity and making them the Marauder, the Dark Rider. Now, the Marauder, or Dark Rider, possessed all their intellect, all their skills, and was an awesome motocross motorcycle racer that solved crimes and beat up the bad guys. So it's kind of like Ghost Rider without any of the cool devil stuff. Marvel introduced these characters within the pages of Captain America, which kind of makes sense. I mean, Team America, Captain America. But shortly after, they got their own monthly title. that only lasted 12 issues from 1982 to 1983. Now, they would make an appearance again in The Thing comic in 1985 under a whole new name, and that is the Thunder Riders. I think by this point, yeah, Ideal scuttled the whole toy line, and it was up to Marvel to pick up the pieces. And I can tell you, nobody was riding that bike for long. But anyway, I was shocked to discover that there was an actual TV commercial for Team America. So let's sit back and enjoy.
Team America. You can make them go through water, or climb, or jump. It's Team America and the Super Stunt Dirt Bike. The Super Stunt Dirt Bike is designed with knobby wheels, so you can make them do high jumping stunts. Team America. You can make them go through water, or climb, or jump. It's Team America and the Super Stunt Dirt Bike from Ideal.
In a follow-up to Team America, the license got handed around to different toy manufacturers all throughout the 80s and 90s. In 2019, American Classic Toys picked up the license for Team America, and they have plans of releasing all the characters and the Marauder figure. I don't know if these will still utilize the cool wind-up motorized motorcycle action, but hey, this is good news for those people clamoring for more Team America. Now, the next toy is unfortunately another misstep in the pages of Marvel Comics. Although this is a wholly different story than that of Team America. See, Marvel wanted to create a toy line and tie it to a comic book, and that was the Saga of Crusaders. Now, the toys were produced by Remco, but everything was created by Marvel, from the character designs, the story beats, the world itself. Now, the toys actually arrived on shelves before the comic book did, so a lot of people had the misconception that Marvel was doing an adaptation of the toys. In reality, though, everything was up to Marvel, and sadly, the toy line failed, along with the comic series. See, the Saga of Crusaders had so much promise. The toys were awesome, the story was pretty cool, and the comic, I enjoyed it. I actually have the full run of 11 issues, and I think, unfortunately, through hindsight, they kind of tout it as an 11-issue miniseries when I think they had all intentions of making it an ongoing series, but by the time it was getting to that point in the run, they kind of knew it was failing, so they just finished up the story and cut ties as soon as they could. Now, when I was a kid, I loved Crusaders. I had no idea about the comics. I only knew about the toys, and I loved them. It was sword and sorcery, so that's awesome. It had an awesome play feature of being translucent, gem-like action figures. That's awesome. And if you know me, I love accessories that actually go on the character. So he had a helmet. That was awesome. This toy line had so much promise. Like I said, that awesome action feature, if you will, of being translucent, gem-like figures and characters was really awesome. I mean, chalk that up to something as cool as glow-in-the-dark. I mean, translucent toys? Mind-blowing. Now, of course, the heroes of this toy line were the ones that sported the gem-like features. The bad guys, on the other hand, had a lava-based aesthetic that, the toys themselves had bumpy and textured skin and rocky outcroppings popping up here and there. Now, we could get into the story of Crusaders, but I want to save that for another day. But what I will talk about is something I've mentioned before, and that is toy companies in the 80s that go all in on a toy line, and unfortunately it fails miserably. They produced awesome play sets and accessories and even dragons for the characters to ride on. Did someone say raddest rides? They will definitely be appearing on that show at some time. And as far as the play set, we already talked about that in Forgotten 80s play sets, one of the earlier episodes. Of course, the number is slipping my mind at the moment. But like any awesome toy rollout, Remco made a commercial, so let's take a look.
The Saga of Crystar, a fantasy world of crystal warriors, demons, and wizards. Good wizards like Ogiodi, evil wizards like Zarda, and underworld demons like Moltar.
They've captured Ogiodi!
Each figure with a crystal prism that makes everything look like this.
Goodness and right, evil and might, the winner is out to you!
The Saga of Crystar collection, each figure sold separately by Remco.
Now, Marvel really had high hopes for Crystar. I mean, they even included him in the Marvel Universe comic. You know, the A to Z handbook of all the different Marvel characters that they released. Awesome comic series. I love it. It was a monthly page turner of characters I'd never heard of and inside info on the characters that I loved. Anyway, Crystar made an appearance in that. And Crystar has had modern appearances as well, making cameos in comics like Marvel Zombies. Wouldn't it be awesome to see a 6-inch version of Crystar produced by Hasbro with that awesome translucent plastic? I think kids today would even go crazy for that. Now, since we have a theme kind of developing, I mean, the first 2 toys that we looked at were from Marvel, so let's look at a second one produced by Remco. This time, exploding from the pages of DC Comics, and it is Sgt Rock. Released in 1982, the same year that Crystar was, the Sgt Rock figures didn't feature any of the glitz and glam that the Crystar toys did. These were very bare basic army toys, albeit based on the DC Comics Sgt Rock. Now, I had a knowledge that Sgt Rock existed in comic form, but I never equated the characters in this toy line to any of the ones in that comic, other than Sgt Rock himself. Now, I might not have realized that these actually were from the DC comic, because the only character that has a real name was Sgt Rock. All the other characters either featured names based on their trade, like instructor or airman, while others featured generic names like Cowboy or Shoots. But Remco took it one step further when they created the bad guys to go along with the Sgt Rock toy line. And I'm sure it wasn't an accident that the bad guy's logo of choice was a snake. Now, not to take anything away from Remco's Sgt Rock toy line, but these figures featured almost no articulation. The arms were molded in a way that they could only hold their gun, and that was about it. Now, I assume Remco kind of just let the license, drift off and saved a few bucks. But in the process of creating the Sgt Rock toy line, they created a bunch of characters of their own. So there were a lot of offshoots that came from the Sgt Rock toy line that Remco produced. Heck, they even tried to capitalize on the Masters of the Universe toy line with these characters. But we'll get into that in a future episode of Plastic Ghosts under a different topic. Now, the next toy is from one of America's most lovable comic book characters, and that is Archie. These bendable figures were released in 1989 by Jesco. They featured all the lovable characters from the comic, including that prick Reggie as well. But of course you have Archie, Jughead, Betty, Veronica. And as always, Moose gets zero love. Anyway, at one point in toy history, bendable figures were all the rage. And to be honest, for bendable figures, these had some really good details and great coloring. I mean, the colors just pop from these characters and they look amazing. Now, I'm not an Archie aficionado at all. And these are definitely not something that I would want in my collection, but we're going to have to hunt for them anyway. So, yeah, stick around for next episode for that. Sorry I didn't spend a lot of time on Archie and the Riverdale gang, but I had to get back to Remco. And to get back to the interconnected trend that we had going on this list, this is another toy produced by Remco, and it's based on a comic book that was put out by Archie Comics in the 60s. The Mighty Crusaders was actually an awesome toy line, based on a comic book that didn't really get that far in life. See, the Crusaders made their appearance in The Fly, but they soon got their own ongoing title, but it only lasted 7 issues. Now, the claim to fame of the Mighty Crusaders was that it was written by Jerry Siegel, one of the creators of Superman. Now, there were 8 characters in total, 4 good guys and 4 bad guys. Now, these heroes had names like the Comet, the Fox, the Shield, the Web. And the bad guys didn't fare much better, with names like the Buzzard, the Eraser, the Sting. But from what I can assume is the villain leader, probably has one of the coolest names of all comic book villains, and that is the Brain Emperor. Now, this figure, I can't tell if he's wearing a brain hat or that's just his oversized brain popping out of the top of his skull. Either way, I have vivid memories of seeing these toys on the shelves at Kmart. And the one that I wanted the most that I was finally able to track down was the Fox. I mean, any fan of the Man of Mystery character like Snake Eyes would gravitate towards the Fox. I mean, full face covering, full bodysuit with awesome fox ears. And like a lot of 60s comic book characters, even though these characters had powers, I assume, they still had guns. Every single one of these characters had a gun. Even the Brain Emperor. I mean, when you have a name like that, I don't think you need a gun. But anyway, the accessories were pretty cheap and ill-fitting. Now, the accessories were pretty cheap and ill-fitting, but they were still pretty cool at the same time. Now, each character came with a shield with an emblem on it that signified what character it was from. Now, a few of these characters I would love to get, but the one that stands out, other than Fox, has to be Buzzard. And I think the thing that makes him really awesome is a removable helmet. A removable, awesome Buzzard helmet, to be exact. Like I've said countless amounts of times, I'm a real sucker for accessories that go on the character, like helmets. So this dude is right up my alley. Anyway, this is a toy line that I cannot wait to see what we find on eBay when we do our hunt for them. And shameless plug, that's going to be next episode. So swing back around to the channel and check that episode when it's released later this week. Now, I don't have a huge recollection of the original Mighty Crusaders comic, and I don't think that's any fault of my own. Like I said, it only went for 7 issues, and they only made 3 appearances in the Fly comic. Now, I'm being completely biased when I say this, but I would love to see these figures make a comeback in the original styles of the 80s toys. I mean, they would look awesome on a 6-inch scale. I mean, these dudes next to your G.I. Joe or your Marvel heroes would be awesome. Anyway, this was just a list of 5 forgotten 80s comic book toys. Now, there are a lot of awesome comic book toys that were made during the 80s that have definitely been forgotten, and a lot of them were from Remco. Surprisingly, Remco was really the king of comic book toys back in the day. Yeah, really shocking, I know, but they produced ones that probably no one else would have made, and yeah, that's why Remco is one of my favorite 80s toy manufacturers of all time. Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. If you got something to say, please leave a comment. I love reading them, and I love getting back to everybody. And if you're new around here and you enjoyed this, or any of the episodes that YouTube is recommending down here, please hit subscribe. And if you hit that little bell icon, you will be notified whenever there's a new episode. So anyway, until next time, thanks for watching. Keep being rad, and stay dorky!